What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a video about what is left for video games in 2024, which, while certainly not terrible, is decidedly lighter than last year in 2023 for sure, due in no small part to just a huge amount of games actually being delayed into 2025, which bizarrely is probably going to make the first couple months of 2025, like February, March, right in there, February especially, a fair bit busier than the next few months, at the very least in terms of big releases. Now, that said, it's still the holidays when everybody is thinking about and playing games and what to get people for the holidays, Christmas and whatnot, and things like various game award shows, so there will still be plenty of things going on, but I wanted to just kind of break some of that down and talk about what I've got going on personally, at least in terms of what I'm planning to review and what I'm looking at, etc., because while most of what I'm covering in this video is things that are of interest to me and I will be covering over the holidays, any gaps are going to get filled in with games that also released this year that I just didn't quite have time for, such as Visions of Mana or Tactical Breach Wizards. I know people have been wanting me to cover those two, and then a couple of others as well. Now, to kick this off, I wanted to talk about a couple of smaller releases that are of note to me, but unlikely to get a full review for one reason or another. Starting with Worshippers of Cthulhu, this is like a little city builder that is due out on October 21st, and I'm mostly just interested to see how they can make something within that mythos also a city builder, because that sounds kind of fun, but also extremely niche, so I feel like a full review would be hard there. Another one is Dead Season, which is actually due out on the 8th here in just a couple of days, and I think it has the potential to be a relatively interesting linear zombie TRPG, but the reason I'm holding off on this one is mostly because the demo itself that they've had available was very unbalanced and left a lot to be desired, and I have a feeling, while the concept is interesting enough, that they're probably not going to stick the landing on that one. But with those out of the way, let's talk about the bigger game releases of the next few months that I will be definitely following. Kicking it off with more of an expansion than anything, Diablo 4's Vessel of Hatred expansion, which is set to bring a new class, familiar stomping grounds, as you chase down what is left of Mephisto. So I plan on diving back into that, at least for a little while, just to run through the story and check out the new class, and I'm likely going to make a video on that experience, and while it certainly won't be like a full-blown review, just because I don't plan on playing it enough to make that happen, I do want to kind of talk about it, because if you follow the channel much, I do love the Diablo franchise and that universe, even if I don't really love the direction they've taken Diablo 4 since launch. Now, following on from that, in just a few days as well, on the 11th, we have Metaphor, Atlas's latest upcoming title, that also has a demo, which is where the footage you're seeing is almost certainly coming from, and I've enjoyed what I've played of it. It kind of brings their signature style into something that, well, frankly, isn't a high school setting, which is always welcome, and the demo itself is very compelling. We're going to be taking on the role of a character who gets embroiled in effectively a war of succession after the king of a region dies at a very inopportune time, let's say, due to some political machinations, and I liked what I played of the demo. But simply because the rest of the schedule is so light, you guys might wind up getting a review out of me on that one. But either way, definitely going to be one of the larger game releases, as Atlas's games are known to be pretty hefty in terms of content. But not too much later from that one, on the 17th, we have the launch of Unknown 9 Awakening, which I'm a little curious about, mostly because it is based on an established universe that has taken place in like comic books and stuff that I personally am fairly unaware of, and so I'm looking forward to checking out this game in my preferred medium to see whether or not that's something I would enjoy. But the gist of it is you are a character who has access to a mysterious dimension known as the Fold, which grants you all sorts of abilities, which you use to fight off a secret society in like the 1940s, 50s era. And it looks like it could be promising, though realistically, I think I just don't know enough about this one to say for sure, so it could definitely go either way. Roughly a week after that, though, we then have Flint, Treasure of Oblivion, an upcoming pirate TRPG that I also got to play as part of a demo that I enjoyed a fair bit, even if I think it needed a few tweaks, which hopefully they'll have time to make between now and when it releases. And while I don't expect this to be a large game by any stretch of the imagination, it does look fun, and again, relatively light release schedule. But then we have what, ironically, might actually wind up being the largest game release of the holidays for 2024, which is Dragon Age the Veilguard. Now, this is a game I remain cautiously optimistic about, but irrespective of that, one thing that Veilguard does have going for it is simply the fact that it really just doesn't have a lot of competition in terms of its release date, as it is releasing right on Halloween, and everything that could have competed with it has pretty much already been delayed out of the year, and thus, outside of any surprise sleeper hits, Veilguard is kind of running unopposed, so to speak. Now, speaking for myself, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds of what this game is or isn't to people, because frankly, I'm looking forward to finding out all of that on my own. Now, following on from that title, though, coming up on November finally, on November 8th to be specific, we see the release of what they're calling Slitterheads, which is an upcoming action adventure where our job is to embody a spirit, so to speak, that is able to hop between various individual human bodies and then use their life force or their blood as weapons against the monstrous entities known as Slitterheads who are hiding amongst the population. And while certainly not a one-for-one comparison, the footage I've seen of this game so far kind of reminds me a little bit of Prototype, and I'll be curious to see if this one manages to do anything beyond just its basic setup premise, or if there's really like an interesting story or world to explore in there. Coming up on the end, though, we then have a couple of other big releases that are kind of right at the very end of the year, with Stalker 2 on November 20th, a long-awaited entry into the Stalker series. This one looks to modernize a lot of its systems, as you might imagine, but still retain that look and feel. And from some of their recent gameplay trailers and deep dives, this one is looking pretty compelling to myself at the very least, but what I am especially interested in is just how alive the world of this one manages to feel, and how in-depth its systems are, as what they've discussed thus far is talking about how its factions have their own conflicts that you can be involved in or simply have nothing to do with, which might see changes in leadership, objectives completed, that kind of thing. But ultimately, only time will tell on that one. Now, rounding it out at the very end of the year, we have the Indiana Jones title upcoming from Bethesda that looks to mostly just be a fun action adventure. And honestly, as a game to sort of not exactly cap off the year just because it's releasing on December 8th, so I'll likely get at least one more in there, but I do think this is the kind of game that might just be fun to chill out and enjoy at the end of the year as I start to take things easy around Christmas time. But they've said this one has a mix of linear, narrative-driven portions, but then there will also be more open area maps where you're going to be able to explore more, and I'm curious to find out what exactly they mean by that and how expansive it is, I suppose. But like I said, mostly just looking forward to this one because it seems like some lighthearted fun to help cap off a year of large games and a ton of work on my part at least. But that is pretty much where we're going to end this video. I think it's important to mention that, again, this is far from a comprehensive list. There are little indie games and the like releasing basically every day. But this is, at the very least, what my plans are for the next 3 months in terms of new game releases, and then we'll have to see where I can fit older games in between those. But at the very least, I think once October has pretty well passed, or at least October and the beginning of November, once people start getting through Dragon Age Veilguard, the rest of the year will be a little bit slower, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because I have plenty of games to catch up on myself, which is exactly what I plan on doing with that time. But that is all I've got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to know what you're looking at for the next few months at least, or maybe this helped you organize or something. I don't really know. This is just the video I felt like making today, so that's what I did. And hopefully you got something out of that. But in any event, certainly let me know how you feel about it down in the comment section below. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.